From poisoning his own stepbrother at the dinner table, to having his own mother stabbed in the womb that carried him, to kicking his pregnant wife to death over an argument about a horse race. This is the entire life of Nero, the teenager handed the most powerful throne in the world, who turned into its most infamous monster. By the time he was done, Rome had burned, the Christians had their first martyrs, and an emperor died convinced the world had just lost its greatest artist. But Nero wasn't born a monster, he was built into one. So let's go back to the beginning. Nero was born in the year 37, with the birth name Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus. His father was a violent aristocrat who, when congratulated on his newborn son, reportedly said nothing good could ever come from himself and the baby's mother. He wasn't wrong, because the mother was Agrippina the Younger, the most dangerous woman in Rome, and she had exactly one goal: put her son on the throne. When Nero's father died, she married her way to the top, specifically her own uncle, the Emperor Claudius. Then she got Claudius to adopt Nero and bump him ahead of Claudius's own son, Britannicus. And once Nero was first in line, Claudius wasn't useful anymore. In the year 54, Claudius died after eating a plate of mushrooms, his favorite food, that historians have suspected ever since were poisoned on Agrippina's orders. Nero became emperor at 16.
She married her uncle and poisoned him to promote her kid, sir. That's a LinkedIn story.
And for a few years, Rome actually thought it had gotten lucky. Because at first, Nero was good. For about 5 years, guided by his brilliant tutor, the philosopher Seneca, he cut taxes, reined in harsh punishments, gave the Senate real power, and threw games the public adored. Historians literally call it the good 5 years. But there was one loose thread. Britannicus, Claudius's real son, was growing up, and he had a stronger claim to the throne than Nero did. So in the year 55, at a royal dinner, Britannicus took a drink, collapsed, and was dead before he hit the floor. Nero calmly told the guests it was just an epileptic fit and kept eating. Britannicus was 14.
Poisoned a child at dinner and ordered dessert, sir.
But poisoning a teenage rival was the easy kill. Nero's next target would be the hardest and the most personal, the woman who'd handed him the throne in the first place. Because the person who'd made Nero emperor had become the person he feared most, his own mother. Agrippina was used to running things, and Nero was done being controlled. So he decided to kill her. And what followed is one of the most insane murder attempts in history. Nero built his mother a luxury party boat, secretly rigged with a collapsing ceiling and a hull designed to fall apart at sea. He threw her a lovely dinner, waved her off into the Bay of Naples, and the boat came apart exactly as planned. One problem: Agrippina was a strong swimmer. She simply swam to shore and went home. So Nero dropped the theatrics and sent a squad of assassins to her villa. As they closed in, Agrippina reportedly pointed to her own stomach and told them to strike there, the womb that had borne Nero. They did. It was March of the year 59.
He built a Bond villain death boat, sir, and she just swam it off.
With his mother in the ground, the last person alive who could control Nero was gone. And with nobody left to stop him, his private life turned just as deadly as his politics. Nero had been married since his teens to a woman named Octavia, daughter of the old Emperor Claudius, and one of the most beloved women in Rome. But Nero had fallen for a noblewoman named Poppaea. So in the year 62, he accused Octavia of adultery, divorced her, banished her to an island, and had her executed. The public was so furious they rioted in the streets for her. Nero married Poppaea anyway, and 3 years later, the same temper that killed his mother killed his new wife too. The story goes that Nero came home late from the races. The pregnant Poppaea nagged him about it, and Nero lost it and kicked her in the stomach hard enough to kill her and the baby.
I've got nothing funny for that one, sir.
But for all the blood already on Nero's hands, the thing history would never forgive him for wasn't a murder at all. It was a fire. In July of the year 64, a fire broke out near the Circus Maximus and exploded across the city. It burned for over a week and destroyed 2/3 of Rome. And the legend everyone's heard is that Nero stood on a rooftop playing music and singing about the fall of Troy while his city burned. Now, in fairness, the best historian we have says Nero wasn't even in Rome when it started, and that he actually ran the relief effort. So the fiddling while Rome burned image is probably a myth. But here's what isn't. After the fire, people whispered that Nero had set it himself to clear land for a palace. So to kill the rumor, he needed someone else to blame, and he picked a small, strange new religious group nobody liked, the Christians. According to the Roman historian Tacitus, Nero had them torn apart by dogs, crucified, and covered in tar and burned alive as human streetlights in his own garden. It was the first organized persecution of Christians in history, and by tradition, the apostles Peter and Paul were among those killed under Nero.
He blamed the fire on the one group with no army, sir.
And the rumor about the palace? It was true. On the cleared land in the heart of Rome, Nero built the Domus Aurea, the Golden House, a 300-acre pleasure palace with an artificial lake and a 100-foot bronze statue of himself as the sun god out front. And that palace told you everything about how Nero saw himself. Because Nero didn't think he was a tyrant. He thought he was an artist, the most important artist who had ever lived. He sang, he played the lyre, he wrote poetry, and he forced the Roman elite to sit through his hours-long private concerts. People reportedly faked their own deaths just to be carried out of the room. He toured Greece like a rock star, entered their sacred athletic games, and won 1,800 crowns, including an Olympic chariot race that he literally fell out of, didn't finish, and was awarded anyway. Because who's going to tell the emperor he lost?
He fell out of the chariot, didn't finish, and still won gold, sir.
But the act was wearing thin, and while Nero played, an empire was quietly deciding it had had enough. In the year 65, a group of senators and officers plotted to assassinate Nero. The plot was discovered, and Nero used it as an excuse to purge everyone he was paranoid about, including his old tutor Seneca, the man who'd guided his best years. Nero ordered Seneca to kill himself, and the old philosopher calmly opened his veins. By the year 68, Nero had run out of friends. The provincial armies revolted, one general after another. The Senate declared him a public enemy, and his own Praetorian Guard, the bodyguards sworn to protect him, simply walked away. Nero fled the city to a servant's villa, and with soldiers riding in to drag him back for a public execution, he tried to take his own life, and couldn't. He stood there, blade in hand, sobbing, until a servant finally had to help him drive it in. His last words, completely on brand to the very end, Qualis artifex pereo, what an artist dies in me.
Even his final exit needed a stagehand, sir.
Nero died on June 9th, in the year 68, 30 years old, and the last of his line. He was the final emperor of the Julio-Claudian dynasty, the bloodline that ran all the way back to Augustus and Julius Caesar himself. With Nero gone and no heir, the most powerful position on earth was suddenly empty, and the empire tore itself apart fighting over it. So that's the entire life of Nero, a boy installed by a killer, a teenager handed the world, a man who murdered his mother, his brother, 2 wives, and his own mentor, who burned a religion to cover a fire, and who died sobbing that the world had just lost its greatest artist. And the chaos his death unleashed is a whole story of its own. The empty throne Nero left behind kicked off the single most insane year in Roman history. 4 different emperors in 12 months, each one worse than the last. If you want to see what happened to Rome the moment Nero died, check out the Year of the 4 Emperors, right here.